Thank you guys for tuning in. Once again, I'm not a professional, but at this point, I might as well be. Why did Frank Ocean stop making music? Did he retire? What is going on? In my personal opinion, it all came down to business transactions. Frank Ocean will not be dropping any type of music, anything. The man doesn't do interviews. There aren't any other appearances that he's doing. He's not even ghostwriting. He's not even interacting with his former peers. Let that sink in. ASAP Rocky is going to explain how Frank Ocean escaped with $40 million. $40 million that was not alone. So take a listen. I know you guys probably seen this video once before, but I'm going to try to explain this business transaction. Well, not all of it, but just an ideal of it.
He's a genius based off the fact that he had a deal and he didn't put out an album in 4 years. And with his deal, he literally figured out how to get 20 million from Lucian Grange, drop his deal, figure out how to make the funds apply to a whole nother album, give him a bullshit album, get out his deal all in one round. Do you know how embarrassed the record industry was? Do you know how hard they've been whipping fucking artists since then? Like, this shit is some real slave shit. Like, you feel me? Like, that man figured out how to finesse the record industry, and people don't talk about that. That it took that man 2 years to do that shit. And then Blonde, he already got a $20 million check from Apple from that shit, which, and he didn't have to give any of that shit back to the label because he was already out his deal once he gave them Endless. You get what I'm saying? Look this.
He did that visual project.
Yeah, exactly. Now, am I lying? Anybody check out if I'm lying? This man, so now since 2016, already up 20 M's. I bet you he's a genius.
Frank is a genius. Imagine escaping with $40 million in total. At first, he came up on the 20 million, great. And then he came up on another 20 million from Lucian Grange, aka the label exec. I'm gonna try to explain this to you people. This, you don't need no pen, no pad, no paper. You don't even need a bunch of visuals for this. All you really have to do is listen. Frank got away with $40 million plus ownership, royalties, residuals coming in, and so on and so forth. He is not binding to do shows, appearances, remixes, radio shit. None of that. Frank got away with $40 million and still has ownership to an extent. With that being said, why would Frank be coming back? Did Frank get blackballed to an extent? No, but if Frank comes back and tries to do anything with these people, is it going to be the greatest deal and greatest contracts and things like that? No. All right. Moving forward, his peers and acts of the such are still in the industry, still in binding contracts, all of that weird shit. You heard what ASAP said. Frank was able to what? Drop a contract, get the funding, and get 20 million. What? Listen, people, listen. He got funding. We don't know how much he got in funding. If he paid that back, however that worked out, boom. But in the end, he still took a W. He took the greatest win out of all of them. You heard what ASAP man said. He said, this is slave shit. They still pulling that whip out. So with that being said, people, what happened was a business transaction. This came down to business. This is no longer about art, the fans, all of that. No, this comes down to strictly business. I don't know who Frank was around, who he was talking to, just that and the third. Frank was able to escape. Who knows if Frank did an audit or not? But all I'm saying is this, people. Frank has no reason to come back to be making any music. He can't. He won't. He shouldn't. It doesn't make sense. He got away with $40 million. Prince said he got, how much did they get that man for that album, they said? And what, he was still caught up in that weird legal binding? Come on. Frank isn't caught up in no weird legal binding. He doesn't, let me slow down. Frank came up with Odd Future, Cartoon Network on TV, doing stuff. Frank's seen the ins and the outs of Hollywood and things like that. Frank ain't missing nothing, people. So when y'all be thinking about this and shit, y'all thinking about that part. Y'all not thinking about the business side of this, what goes all on behind this. Frank didn't fall off on, so well, my production, I'm having problems with the label because they don't want to do this. They don't see my vision. This, nah. Frank got away with $40 million. He ain't talking to nobody. He ain't out there in Hollywood being weird at no parties and nothing like that. Frank got away from the industry. That's all this really is about. Frank got away from the industry. We can go into depth like, did he see something? Wait, I think it was his brother's death. Despite his brother's death or anything like that, that has nothing to do with this. This has something to do with business transactions. He does not have to sit in these people's face no more, sit at these parties, do all of that extra shit to make sure sales on his album are going to be there and weird shit like that. He don't got to do none of that. Frank got away. A lot of people don't get away like that. Let's be honest. I can go on a little bit more.
Like Mariah Carey just had this big $20 million. That's like a huge deal, right?
So you feeling that?
No, well, what I mean, I don't understand. What the public sees the word $20 million an album. Well,
let's see. Do you all think that's a good deal?
Well, I mean, tell me why. I mean, what am I missing?
Okay, let's do some math.
Okay.
If
you do math like that?
Kinda. If you sign me,
Okay.
you signed me to a record company,
Right.
or a record deal. Let's suppose you have a record company.
Right.
How much would you give me? The album sells for $18, right? $18.
Whatever, yeah.
All right. How much of that would you give me?
Well, I don't know how it works.
Well, no.
Half?
Half? Half sound good?
Yeah.
All right. Check this out. If I sell 1 million copies, I'm gonna have $10 million, right? Roughly $10 million.
Right.
If I sell 2 million copies, I got $20 million.
Right.
If I just sell 3 million copies, I got $30 million. Now who has the biggest record deal?
Oh, I see. Yeah, right. Okay.
Right?
Right.
So Mariah kind of got screwed.
How a record is broken down. So they tell you, you make a song, I write a song, and I rap the song, I record the song. So once I release the song, there is what's called a master and a publishing portion of the record. So the master is the recording of it. So if I sign a record deal or a recording deal, I sign away my masters, which means the label owns the recording of that music. On the publishing side, if I write a record and I sign away my publishing in a publishing deal, they own the composition of work. So the idea of it, you know what I'm saying? So if I play your song on piano that you wrote, I have to pay you publishing money because it comes from that idea. Or if I sing a line from that song, it's from the publishing portion. If I sample the actual record, if I take a piece of that actual recorded music, that's from the master. None of that shit makes any sense, right? That shit didn't make any sense to you? Because that shit is goofy as hell.
And the reason I added the Prince and Chance the Rapper here, I know it's a bit kind of boring, but I need you guys to get a small understanding of how the giant machine actually works, like the publishing and how the deals work, all of that and whatnot. And why did Frank do what he? Why did Frank do it? It only made sense to do it. Just listen to what Prince just said and to what Chance just said. How all of that was just so boring and so much, and he found the way to come up on 40 million and keep 70%, and then plus residuals and more. You cannot make this up. And then to only have released technically three great bodies of work. One of them happens to be a 40-minute audio visual. Can't make this up, people. Guys, let's look at it like this. Frank was signed, and when he was signed to Def Jam through Universal and whatnot, they didn't even understand who Frank was. Like, Frank was really the future thing of music. They perceived his music as being too old and R&B and etc. Even though other creatives really did take a liking towards him and perceived him to be something. When he decided to release Nostalgia Ultra, quote unquote, somewhat slightly independently, the label didn't even know it was him. They heard about it, they knew about it, but no one in the room was like, ain't that Frank? But they say it was because he legally changed his name. But even still, that's how you know no one was paying attention to him. Listen, he came up with the acts of Tyler, the Creator, Odd Future, and a label, they understood, like, okay, that's something. But they didn't see it. He was just too close to it, if you ask me. They were just too close to it to even perceive what it really was. So yeah, if you ask me, Frank got frustrated. He needed ownership. It was the all in all. Frank came up with Odd Future and still getting overlooked at certain times. And I'm talking about this has anything to do with Tyler the Creator or anything like that. No, I'm just saying just getting overlooked at times. You know what I'm saying? From the likely peers if he was around, he was still getting overlooked, not getting the notoriety that he deserved at the time. That's why I said it was just all too close. And sometimes, last but not least, Frank Ocean did get to work with some very great acts before he did cut out on us. Beyonce, Kanye West, Andre 3000, Mark Rubin. And that's what he released on his own. And he's getting 70% of that. And plus whatever else he has to share with them, however he got that figured out. So, yeah, Frank knew what he was doing. He did a genius exit strategy, cut his losses early. So thank you guys for tuning in. And